"Excuse me, Grandpa. This isn't the retirement line." Old Ernie was on his knees on the cold diner floor, his wooden cane rolling toward the door. 5 bikers in leather jackets laughed loudly while other customers watched in silence, some even recording with their phones. The folded newspaper lay scattered beside him. Ernie slowly got to his feet, ignoring the pain in his knee, and picked up his cane with trembling hands. His eyes briefly met those of the woman behind the counter before he muttered, "Sorry for the trouble." What no one in that diner knew yet was that a phone call was being made, one that would change the course of that fateful day. Durango, Colorado, wakes up every morning wrapped in the cold embrace of the Rocky Mountains. The thin air cuts through the lungs like crystal blades, carrying the scent of pine trees and the constant promise of snow on the horizon. The cobblestone streets of the historic downtown echo with the sound of heavy boots and the distant rumble of pickup trucks. Main Street stretches like a straight scar across the heart of the town. That's where you'll find the Sunrise Diner, a polished aluminum eatery that catches the morning sun like a mirror, serving strong coffee and toast since 1962. Its windows are lined with small, faded American flags, and the smell of frying bacon leaks through the door every time someone walks in or out. At exactly 6:15 a.m., every single day, a familiar figure emerges from the hills surrounding the town. Ernest Sullivan walks slowly, his measured steps tapping out a steady rhythm against the cracked asphalt. At 75, Ernie carries the weight of decades on his stooped shoulders, but still holds himself with a posture that whispers, echoes of discipline, though no one in town really knows why. His cap is sun-bleached and weathered by countless mornings of sun and rain. The curved brim casts a shadow over his gray eyes, eyes that have seen things most people in Durango couldn't begin to imagine. His hands, marked by age spots and small scars, grip a dark wooden cane with quiet resolve. His right knee, injured decades ago under circumstances he never talks about, locks up sometimes when the weather shifts. Ernie always wears the same brown jacket, a bit loose now on a frame that was once more solid. His faded jeans are held up by a simple leather belt, practical, nothing fancy. His walking shoes, though worn, are always clean and tightly laced, a habit he keeps religiously. He lives alone in a white-painted wooden house tucked into the southern hills of Durango, surrounded by pine trees. The property is modest, a small yard he mows every Saturday, a front porch with 2 rocking chairs collecting dust, and a shed in the back that's always locked. Neighbors rarely see him except during those early morning walks. At the Sunrise Diner, Ernie is known simply as the old man with the newspaper. He always orders the same thing, black coffee, 2 slices of buttered toast, and he never skips his copy of the Durango Herald, which he reads carefully from front to back. He always sits in the same seat, the 3rd stool at the counter back to the wall, facing the entrance. He speaks little, always says thank you, and leaves a precise $2 tip every time. The morning waitress, Linda Martinez, a 45-year-old woman with brown hair pulled into a tight bun, treats him with polite kindness. She's noticed he never looks people directly in the eye, that his hands tremble slightly when he lifts his coffee cup, and that sometimes he just stares out the window for long minutes, as if waiting to see something that never arrives. Other customers greet him with quiet nods but never start a conversation. Ernie belongs to that category of people who move through life almost invisible, present but unnoticed, like lampposts or mailboxes, part of the scenery. When he finishes his coffee and newspaper around 7:30, Ernie neatly folds the pages, sets $2 beside his empty cup, and rises with the help of his cane. He walks to the door with the same steady rhythm, pushes it open, and disappears into the streets of Durango. Until the next morning, no one knows that inside his house, in a locked drawer of his bedroom dresser, Ernie keeps things he never uses, yellowed letters he never rereads, and an old telephone that never rings. No one imagines that those trembling hands once held far more than coffee cups, or that his distant eyes once looked upon horizons most people only read about in history books. The locked shed in his backyard holds secrets Durango would never suspect, and Ernie prefers it that way. It was a Tuesday in October when everything changed. The morning cold in Durango cut deeper than usual, and a thin layer of frost coated the windshields of the cars parked along Main Street. Ernie was following his sacred routine, his cane tapping against the asphalt in a steady rhythm as he made his way to the diner. The Durango Herald was folded under his left arm, still carrying the smell of fresh ink. As he approached the Sunrise Diner, Ernie noticed something different. 5 Harley-Davidson motorcycles were lined up in front of the building, their chrome surfaces reflecting the neon lights from the diner's windows. Laughter and foul language echoed through the glass. Ernie hesitated for a moment, his fingers tightening around the cane. But he kept walking. The glass door felt heavier than usual as he pushed it open. The small bell above it gave a faint jingle, barely audible over the noise inside. The diner, usually quiet at this hour, was now overrun by 5 men wearing black leather jackets and sunglasses, even indoors. They had taken over the center stools at the counter, the very spot where Ernie always sat. "Waitress," one of them yelled toward the woman behind the counter. "Another round of coffee and pancakes, and don't forget the syrup, sweetheart." Linda Martinez avoided looking at them directly, her movements tense as she poured coffee into mugs that shook slightly in her hands. Ernie stood at the entrance staring at his usual seat, now occupied. Other regulars, Farmer Joe Murphy, City Clerk Sarah Chen, retired Bill Watson, were huddled in corners, whispering nervously and glancing toward the group. The usual morning atmosphere of friendly chatter had been replaced by something thick and tense. "Excuse me," Ernie said softly, walking toward the counter. The leader of the group, Tyler Blackwood, son of local real estate mogul Richard Blackwood, turned slowly. His sunglasses reflected the fragile image of the elderly man with a cane. "Well, look what we've got here," Tyler said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "An old-timer dropping by." The others laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the diner's aluminum walls. Ernie tried to step around the group, but Tyler deliberately stood up, blocking his path. "Hey, Grandpa," Tyler said, poking Ernie in the chest with his finger. "Can't you see we're busy here? Maybe it's time you went home and watched some TV." Ernie took a step back. "I just want my coffee, son. No need for trouble." "Trouble?" Tyler laughed loud and long. "Who said anything about trouble? I'm just saying this place is for people like us now. Your time's up, old man." The other bikers stood up too, forming a semicircle around Ernie. Phones appeared. They were filming. Linda tried to intervene. "Please, guys." "Shut up, waitress," Tyler snapped. "Nobody asked you." Ernie tried to sidestep again, but Tyler shoved him, harder this time. The old man stumbled, his cane slipping across the damp floor. The Durango Herald flew from his hands, its pages scattering across the cold tile. "Excuse me, Grandpa, this isn't the retirement line." And then it happened. Tyler gave one final push, and Ernie dropped to his knees on the diner's icy floor. His wooden cane rolled toward the door, bumping into the leg of a table. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. The other customers watched in silence, some discreetly filmed on their phones. No one moved to help. Ernie stayed on his knees for several long seconds, breathing heavily. His hands trembled more than usual as he tried to pull himself together. His right knee, the one that had bothered him for decades, throbbed with pain. Slowly, Ernie got to his feet, trying to ignore the pain, picked up his cane and began gathering the scattered pages of the newspaper. His hands were shaking so badly that some of the pages slipped again. No one helped. His eyes briefly met the waitress's before he murmured, "Sorry for the trouble." That was when Linda found her courage. "Please leave. You're not welcome here." Tyler laughed. "Not welcome? My daddy owns half this town, sweetheart. We're welcome wherever we damn well please." Ernie walked to the door in complete silence, pushed the heavy glass open and vanished into the cold Durango morning. For the first time in years, Ernest Sullivan didn't have his morning coffee. The walk home had never felt so long. Ernie made his way down Grant Avenue with steps slower than usual, his cane tapping unevenly against the asphalt. His right knee protested with every movement, echoing a pain he had learned to live with decades ago. But this time the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation burning in his chest. When he reached his house, his hands trembled as he turned the key in the lock. He stepped inside, closed the door, and stood in the hallway for several long minutes, breathing in the familiar silence of his solitude. Then, something shifted in his gray eyes. Ernie walked down the hallway to the back of the house and stepped out the rear door. The dark wooden shed sat 20 yards behind the main house, surrounded by pine trees that shielded it from view. He always kept it locked. The key was hidden beneath a specific stone, the third one from the left just beside the door. Inside the shed, under a faded blue tarp, was a simple wooden table. Ernie pulled back the tarp with a reverent care. The table was covered with items no one in Durango would ever expect to find there. Yellowed military maps of Southeast Asia, a perfectly maintained Colt .45 pistol, medals in velvet boxes, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Distinguished Service Medal, and at the center of the table, a black rotary phone connected to a special line, one that never showed up on any local phone bill. Ernie sat down in the wooden chair, which creaked slightly under his weight. His hands no longer trembled. He picked up the receiver and dialed a number he had known by heart for 40 years. It rang only once. "Checkpoint Charlie," said a raspy voice on the other end. "Colonel, this is Gunnery Sergeant Sullivan, 1st Division, Alpha Company," Ernie said. "Activating code QTY-71, location, Durango, Colorado." "Sarge, how long's it been, 20 years? 22, Henderson. I need the boys, it's personal." "Understood. How many do you need? How many are still operational?" "Let me think. Rodriguez is still in Denver. Kim's working in Colorado Springs. Walker's fully retired. Martinez is in Pueblo. Thompson passed away last year, Sarge." Ernie closed his eyes for a moment. "Send whoever you've got, Henderson. As soon as possible." "As fast as possible," Ernie repeated, his voice carrying the command of a man who had once led others into battle. He hung up the phone and sat in silence for a few minutes. Then he stood, carefully covered everything with the tarp again, locked the shed and went back inside the house. 52 minutes later, the sound of powerful engines echoed down Grant Avenue. 6 black SUVs, armored GMC Yukons, lined up in front of the Sunrise Diner. People stepped out of shops to see what was going on. From the first SUV stepped a man of 68, broad shoulders, posture straight as ever. Joe, a former corporal, now head of a private security firm. From the second came a 61-year-old woman with close-cropped gray hair, Sarah Kim, a retired sergeant from the Colorado Springs Police Department. Patricia Walker emerged from the third vehicle, 67, once a communications specialist, now a consultant in Grand Junction. Smith stepped out of the fourth, 69, a former sniper. From the fifth SUV came James Henderson himself, 70, the retired colonel who had answered the call. From the sixth and final SUV stepped Ernest Sullivan. Ernie still walked with his cane, but his shoulders were square, his chin held high, and his eyes were cold steel. The crowd began to gather. Linda Martinez stepped outside the diner, recognizing Ernie but not understanding what was unfolding. The 5 bikers were still inside, unaware of what was coming. Henderson approached Ernie. "Sergeant Sullivan." "Colonel," Ernie replied, offering a salute. "Thank you for coming." "Always, Sarge. Always." Ernie looked through the diner's window. Tyler Blackwood was laughing loudly. The 6 veterans walked in formation toward the entrance of the Sunrise Diner. The bell above the door jingled as Henderson pushed it open, but this time it sounded more like a war drum. The noise inside the diner stopped instantly. Tyler Blackwood looked up to see 6 older men and women entering, walking straight toward him. He chuckled. "What the hell is this? The Senior Citizen Breakfast Club?" Henderson stepped to the center of the diner and raised his hand for silence. His voice, trained to command soldiers in combat, filled the room. "My name is James Henderson, retired Colonel, United States Army, and I want you all to meet a man." The Sunrise Diner was completely silent. Tyler Blackwood and his buddies looked nervously at the 6 veterans now positioned strategically around the room. Henderson continued, his voice echoing with the authority of decades in command. "This man here, he said, pointing to Ernie, "is Ernest Sullivan, Gunnery Sergeant, United States Army, 1st Division, Alpha Company." He went on, "During an operation in Vietnam back in 1971, Sergeant Sullivan and our platoon were surrounded for 3 days in the mountains near NK. No communication, no supplies. 7 of us were wounded." Sarah Kim stepped forward. "I was one of the wounded. Shrapnel tore through my chest and leg. I was bleeding so much I thought I'd die right there." Tyler tried to speak, but no words came. For the first time in his privileged life, he was speechless. Smith took over the story. "Sarge organized us to carry the wounded in shifts across 15 kilometers of jungle. When the supplies ran out, he shared his own rations. On the second night," Patricia Walker added, "a North Vietnamese patrol found us. We were 9 American soldiers, 7 injured, against 23 heavily armed enemies. Sarge created a diversion so we could break out and reach a safer extraction point." Joe looked Tyler straight in the eye. On the 3rd day, when the rescue helicopters finally arrived, Sergeant Sullivan was the last to board. He made sure no enemies were watching us from the trees. Always the last one out. Like a true leader. Henderson stepped back to the center. "Ernest Sullivan saved 8 lives during that operation. He was awarded the Bronze Star for valor, the Purple Heart for his injuries, and the Distinguished Service Medal for exceptional leadership under enemy fire." The crowd inside the diner had grown. People squeezed in at the door, others watched through the windows. "And you?" Henderson turned to Tyler and his friends. "You humiliated this man. You knocked an American war hero to the ground like he was trash." Tyler had gone pale. His hands were shaking. I didn't know." "Didn't know?" Sarah Kim snapped. "You didn't know you're supposed to respect your elders? You didn't know you don't shove someone to the ground? You didn't know you don't humiliate another human being?" Linda Martinez stepped forward, eyes full of tears. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm sorry. I should have done something. I should have kicked them out." Ernie spoke for the first time, his voice calm but steady. "Don't worry, Linda. You were scared. I understand." Outside, more cars pulled up along Main Street. A sleek black Mercedes arrived. Richard Blackwood, Tyler's father and the town's real estate magnate. Someone had clearly called him. He stepped inside, took one look at the scene, and instantly grasped the weight of the moment. "Tyler," Richard said, his voice ice cold. "What have you done?" Henderson briefly summarized the morning's events. With every word, Richard's face turned a deeper shade of red, from shame, then fury. "Tyler Blackwood," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You and your friends will apologize, right now. And then you'll leave this diner and never set foot in it again. Not as long as I'm alive." Tyler tried to protest. "Dad, Now!" Richard thundered. Tyler stood, trembling, and walked up to Ernie. "Sir, Mr. Sullivan, I'm sorry. Deeply. There's no excuse for what I did." His 4 friends followed, mumbling their embarrassed apologies before hurrying out of the diner. Richard Blackwood stepped up to Ernie. "Mr. Sullivan, on behalf of my family and this entire town, I apologize. My son will face consequences, and I would like to do something to make this right." Ernie shook his head. "No need for that, Mr. Blackwood. I just want to enjoy my coffee in peace." Richard turned to Linda. "From today on, Mr. Sullivan has a reserved seat in this diner. Coffee and meals. On the house for life. He deserves to be honored for what he's done for this country." The crowd began to clap. At first, it was a soft, hesitant applause. Then louder, fuller, until the entire diner was echoing with respectful cheers. Henderson turned to Ernie. "Well, Sarge, mission accomplished?" Ernie smiled, for the first time in months. "Mission accomplished, Colonel. Thank you for coming." "Always, Sarge, always." The veterans exchanged firm handshakes and quiet promises to stay in touch. Gradually, the diner returned to its normal rhythm, but the energy had shifted. Something unspoken now filled the air. Reverence. Linda brought over a steaming cup of coffee to Ernie, now seated at his usual spot. Ernie unfolded his Durango Herald. His hands no longer trembled. His shoulders were straight, and for the first time in decades, Ernest Sullivan didn't feel invisible. Outside, life in Durango went on, but now everyone knew who the old man with the cane was, the one who walked down Grant Avenue every morning. And now everyone knew that heroes walk among us, waiting only to be seen. If you enjoyed this story, click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story, especially for you.